You never have to be under the heel of nobody ever again. No matter how long the arm of the Alliance might get, we'll just get ourselves a little further.
Let's get to the third part of our initial sentence and focus on the cancelled element. After all I've said in the show's favor, I still understand that many people I've spoken with simply don't want to begin a story that doesn't have an ending. I have about 6 responses to this, but let me start with the base level. Thucydides never got to finish writing History of the Peloponnesian War, and that doesn't stop it from being the greatest history book of all time. But really, more importantly, what makes the journey itself worth it? What makes all this fan crying about the cancelled show worth beginning?
I'm telling you why.
The answer is Kaylee, alright? It's Kaylee. But let's have some fun with this and pretend the answer isn't Kaylee for a second, and then we'll all act surprised when we get there. Come on, it'll be fun. There's a sense of joyful genre fun in Firefly that is just infectious. And I don't just mean that a cowboy riding a horse can somehow catch up to a man on a hovercraft shooting a laser pistol, though I do mean that as well. The joy is everywhere in the show, not just in the bombastic, but in the quiet and soft. There are all these beautiful little moments emphasizing the small pleasures of life. Firefly's victories are usually more comfortable and intimate than the giant space battles the genre would have you believe are the focus. In Lord of the Rings, it was important for the filmmakers to show that Sam Gamgee and his assistant aren't just saving the world, they're saving the Shire, a small, cozy place that means home to them, a place we've seen in all its beauty and want to defend. In the same way, the crew of the ship are saving their home, a pleasant place with homemade signs and their family on board. They aren't waiting on a lottery ticket or building a business, they're making the best of right now. It's an important message, especially for someone like me, who can easily spend most of my day carefully sacrificing my present in hopes of a brighter future. The crew of this ship are in the aftermath of a devastating conflict and are trying to enjoy their freedom in the moment. This means sports games with no rules. It means poker between people gambling their chores because they have no money. It means River spontaneously dancing in a field of strangers and enjoying the moments outside. Put simply, I don't know how many other fun, goofy genre shows like this also have such a reverence for the simple joys and morality of the common person, whether those people are mechanics or petty criminals.
Petty?
I didn't mean petty.
What did you mean?
This is a pastoral romanticization that puts a lot of weight in slowly revealing Mal's personal code. Figuring out his personal creed is a big element of the show's appeal.
I might not show respect to your job, but he didn't respect you. That's the difference. Yours. She don't belong to nobody.
Malcolm's decisions and creed are the show's libertarianism, and the focus isn't on the dislike for anyone with authority, it's a distinct love of the commoner. This is not a complex universe of moral grays, this is a libertarian child's toy collection. There's something to be said for the quiet dignity of a doctor practicing the Hippocratic Oath on a man, no matter what, even if that person just tried to rat him out to the government. Jane, you're the worst! Or Inara bringing the group to stand up for the rights of independent working women, and the search for freedom and dignity, returning to a world as a veteran for the losing side when the world doesn't seem to want you anymore. The episodes are filled with victories that are more soft and true than the guns and spaceships would suggest, and for that I think it deserves enormous respect. Everything good about the show is right there on screen, not vaguely suggested in lore. The character and world building I've been talking about isn't me extrapolating from vague hints, it's presented quite plainly. I'm always surprised when I revisit the show how much of the world is explained through food. Why food? Because everyone knows people need to eat food to stay alive. It's totally clear. There's no need for Naboo trade federations. Mr. Lucas, what is happening? The currency that the crew get in the first episode looks like gold bars, but it turns out to be rations for hungry settlers.
One of those will feed a family for a month. Longer, if they don't like their kids too well.
Shepard gives Kaylee a single strawberry as payment, which is apparently a luxury. A few episodes later, we see a buffet table full of it for rich people. Wealth cap. Got it. This birthday cake is made of protein, but it's the thought that counts. The crew can't afford proper baking materials. Everyone gets a few apples after a successful job, and River and Kaylee chase each other around the ship to grab one. How sweet. Zoe is then asked why she and the captain always cut their apples before eating them, which leads to another horrifying war story of apples with explosives in them. This one opening has so many things happening in it that all complement different parts of the show. Character, theme, world building, Kaylee. The world of Firefly is fundamentally a pleasant place to be. The sets and lighting are nice, and I'm always surprised to remember that Firefly is actually really funny.
And if I'm wrong, you best shoot me now. Or we could talk more.
What can it be? We're all doomed. Who's flying this thing? Oh, right, that would be me.
Jane. There's something the captain has to do for himself.
No, it's not.
Oh.
These are just the simple ones. My favorite jokes in the show usually take a full episode of tension to set up and are funniest when you understand the characters at work here.
Jane. Go play with your rain stick.
The show isn't even primarily a comedy. The dramatic moments in the show are frightfully dark, and the horrifying elements are creepy and have more Ridley Scott's Alien than you'd expect in your space western. Now, this is a lot, tonally. I personally like tonal combinations like this. I enjoy stories that go full tragedy and comedy, but I completely understand that there are people who would find this uncomfortable. If you can only watch Christopher Nolan films and find everything else tonally inconsistent, this show will kill you. I'll admit here that there are a handful of times that the serious stuff in the comedy is so earnest that it just feels a bit much.
We need corn.
Jane, your mouth is talking. You might want to look to that.
Yeah, there are some groaners. While these quips were actually among my favorite aspects of the show when I first watched it, I think it's actually probably among the weakest now when I'm watching it today, but that's just a preference thing. On the other side of the tonal world, there are a handful of times when the serious is just a bit much. Let me be clear again that I'm totally on board with this show 95% of the time and as being dramatic. I can't believe they pulled off this torture scene, but I sometimes wish there was a bit of pullback. I have some smaller criticisms too, nothing too important. The hand-to-hand combat leaves something to be desired, and the musical stings have become quite a relic of their era. Again, the show is aware of its own goofiness, so I recommend embracing the cheesy musical stings. Just live a little. The creators know what they're doing.
Always do seem to find one, though.
Yes, as I always do seem to find some cheesy act break.
And finally, there's a common idea among people like me that there are no bad episodes of Firefly, which is nearly true. But I maintain that the episode Trash is... Wait, I had something for this. I'm kidding, but Trash is an inferior repeat heist episode after Ariel, and Saffron's character really irritates me here. It's not a bad episode, it's just a weird repetition, and rather unwelcome if we're only getting 14 episodes. Alright, I'm done. Okay, wait, one more mistake. Firefly has the best blocking error of all time.
Now, if we look carefully, I believe we'll see Alan is not holding anything. Nobody noticed. We had to pull the chair back to get the shot, and nobody noticed that he was miming it, and we still used it.
But alright, Buster, I hear you say, arms still crossed and squinting at the screen. If you think the show is so good and has so few flaws, then why was it cancelled, smart guy? Simple. Firefly was brutally killed. Mishandled and poorly marketed and skewered in presentation to absolute shreds. This was done by 20th Century Fox, the same studio, as I will never stop saying, that had trouble marketing The Princess Bride, a perfect film that is made for basically everyone. I'm not sure how either of these things happened, and I know I'm being unreasonable. These two events probably had nothing in common, but how? I don't want answers, I want to be angry.
You can't keep getting away with it!
The show premiered when no one was sitting in front of their televisions, so no one knew it was on. The marketing material is so bad. What is this? Then, the studio didn't like the first episode, so they showed the second episode before anything else, and then they aired everything else out of order. Then they only showed 11 of the 14 episodes by the time the show was cancelled. This is unacceptable, F-, the gold standard of tomfoolery. Firefly was stabbed in the gut before being released into the arena, and the fact that this profuse bleeding isn't apparent in the final product when viewed in the correct order is incredible. So make sure you watch the show in the intended order, because there are still some places that try and give you the wrong chronology. Be careful. The first thing you see should be a war, the last thing should be a man floating in outer space. Now, canceling the show before its first season finale does leave certain questions unanswered, like what's going on with the Blue Sun Corporation? What's the deal with Shepard? What do all these hints mean? And why does the Alliance know him? Why is Inara on the ship? Why did she leave her life of luxury? Again, there are subtle hints of something. What's her deal? And that's not even including the big hints of future cool episodes that were going to happen, like if Jane got his own ship, or Zoe and Wash having the baby they were talking about. Heck, looking back, what compelled Mal to join the war? Okay. Let's take a moment to rest. We've earned it. We've been together on this for a while, we've had some good times, but now's the part where I betray you. Here's the double cross. I'm going to say something that's going to shock nearly everyone who's seen Firefly, and I want you all to find it in your Kaylee to forgive me. All these unanswered questions do not need to damage your enjoyment of the show. Before I get to the controversial stuff, let me be clear. It makes me sad I don't get 6 seasons in a movie with these characters.
Am I not supposed to have what I want?
But no matter what you hear from fans, Firefly is not a half-formed story, a half-creation that must be avoided. It is a pleasant and wonderful collection of stories that sadly were not continued. I don't need to know about Shepard Book's past to appreciate his character in the show. It works on its own, same with Inara and everything else. See, Firefly has well-disciplined, strict episodic storytelling, and while it hints at a larger, overarching macro story, that isn't the central appeal. Each episode is satisfying on its own, with beginning, middle, and end. And that became less and less the norm. If I were to cancel shows like Daredevil, Chernobyl, Westworld, or Watchmen halfway through their first seasons, they would be fundamentally incomplete stories because they are telling a larger narrative with soft episodic divisions within seasons. Digital streaming made it easier to watch several episodes in one sitting, and so episodes increasingly felt more like chapters rather than complete stories on their own. I'm not saying that's inherently bad, I'm just saying Firefly isn't like this. Firefly has 14 episodes, and each of these fun little adventures stand on their own merits, because they expected people to only be able to watch an episode every week, or heaven forbid, possibly out of order. If just the episode Ariel popped up out of nowhere, I would be telling people everywhere to go check out this interesting little video that made a better, funnier heist short film than most blockbusters. Heart of Gold is a really interesting spaghetti western, and the message Wow, the message might actually be my favorite. It's a heartbreaking episode of a veteran's life after his war and his failure to help his family.
You weren't that far off about me being stupid. I never could get my life working right. Not once after the war.
See, the reason I'm going rogue here is because I think fans of the show are going to argue with me on my larger point here. Firefly is, in many important ways, complete. I've heard some friends of mine really indulge in the tragedy of the show's cancellation, and I was told not to watch the show by the same person who told me they loved it. And it seems that many others were told the same, seemingly contradictory thing. We love it, don't watch it. And an element of that, strangely enough, is that the show itself kind of romanticizes this perspective, because there's a curious similarity between the narrative of the story and the actual history of the show being made and watched today, long afterwards. Firefly, the show, is about survival and the joy of living freely, despite a great bureaucratic force's indifference and incompetence. Firefly, as a show, lived freely and enjoyed a short and glorious life before being cancelled by Fox's bureaucratic indifference and incompetence. The parallel is fascinating, and it naturally allows its fans to feel a connection with the bitter and tired Malcolm Reynolds, still indignant at a great injustice. Heck, on a surface level, it romanticizes this anger in a way that makes the fans being sad and upset seem like the correct response. It isn't. Fans, myself included, need to sometimes relax about this show. And I say that as someone who just spent a long time making a video about a show I like. We can make jokes, but I don't want people who have never seen the show to be discouraged from experiencing it because we are unnecessarily dramatic and saying things like, I wish the show never existed so I wouldn't be sad it's cancelled.
What?
Quit it. It was a good show. Be more like Kaylee. Be happy it existed and had such consistent quality. My bunker is filled with stories that were continued for far too long. In a world of geek oversaturation, Firefly is a strangely welcome change. I don't understand. How much is enough Doctor Who? We have like 19 Doctor... We got 11 hours of Firefly proper. And we even got an extra movie, Serenity, to wrap up a lot of the plot threads. Not all the plot threads, but some central ones. Now, I haven't been talking much about this movie, despite it being the finale of the Firefly television show and Joss Whedon's farewell to the universe before Mickey Mouse made a terrible reboot show in 2032 that we don't want to talk about. Anyway, this may make it seem like I don't like the film. Actually, I like it a lot. As a film made to conclude a show that was cancelled 2 years earlier, it does a lot of things right. It's fun and exciting, and it's clearly a heartfelt farewell from the show's original writers and cast. I'm genuinely really grateful this exists. But as much as I appreciate it providing answers to questions like what's going on with River and the Alliance, my brain never really digests this film as part of the Firefly series proper, and I finally figured out why. Don't get me wrong, you should probably watch this film with every Firefly rewatch, but it feels like a different beast. Firefly, the show, is about episodic, pulpy space cowboy adventures in warm lighting. Serenity, the film, is a tight, dramatic, conclusive finale to the show's world building in really weird, cold lighting. I feel like I need a jacket just watching this. It's a surprisingly dour film. It's a proper drama, and while being a successful finale event, it doesn't feel like more Firefly. It heavily implies a few seasons happened between the episodes we saw and now, because a lot of these characters are in a much different place than when we left them. I know why this was done. The director's commentary is helpful on this, and I agree with the reasoning. It allows them character arcs, drama. But the Simon I know and love gets punched a lot.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more?
Simon in the movie has grown a lot and is now angrily punching the captain. He must have had a difficult season 3. What happened to the boy who got bullied by Jane all the time? He grew up too fast. Similarly, Malcolm is in a pretty dark place here, and the writers are actually quite clear that this is a Malcolm who has abandoned some of the principles that really established his character in the show proper.
If I ever kill you, you'll be awake. You'll be facing me, and you'll be armed.
I'm unarmed. Good.
This is a good movie. It has good comedic moments, and its action is way better than the show. I'm glad to live in a world where I got to see River become the angel of death killing space zombies in a way she was always supposed to become in the show. What a time to be alive. But the film wisely doesn't try and recapture the central goofiness of Space Cowboys. And that goofiness, that comfort, is the beating heart of Firefly. Each of the positive elements of the show I've been talking about, from the crew dynamics to the political background to the emphasis on fun and the simple joys in life, is all fundamentally in service of building this home. A place in time and space that people can enjoy and call their own. And while Malcolm is a man recovering from the end of his world and is learning to have faith in the world around him, the real moral center of this ship is Kaylee, who already does. See, I told you it was Kaylee. The answer was inside of us all along. Firefly, the show, is a lot like the ship it tells the story of. It's a place to be, an environment to enjoy. It has no right to be nearly as comfortable as it is. It's basically a cramped submarine in space, but it still manages to feel alive. It may not be as impressive or big or expensive as the others, but that beautiful little Firefly has more care and character than most other shows have in 7 seasons. The metaphor, it's crumbling! Look at how different each character's room is. Notice the painstaking lengths the show goes to demonstrate the architecture and the way the rooms are connected to one another, the space between them. All these beautiful little details and quirks helps me understand why I'm so drawn to rewatch Firefly again, instead of slogging through whatever seasons-long, critically acclaimed misery show got all the awards. I'm sorry, Max, I'm not watching any more Walking Dead. It never ends! Perhaps you're watching this video in better times, but here, stuck in this terrible year, when the world feels like it's ended and we're all stuck in cramped spaces, avoiding the mistakes of larger forces outside our bunkers, Firefly makes sense. It draws my inner adolescent out with silly jokes and shootouts and dumb, campy fun, and then it reminds me to finally enjoy the simple things, to appreciate that which I still have, and to just cheer up. The heart and soul of the show isn't Malcolm. It's Kaylee, because Kaylee isn't just a positive character or some delicate figure that can be admired for its purity. Remember, this isn't about how likable she is, it's about how she helps the story, and Kaylee is a thematic culmination of basically everything that Firefly values. Kaylee is the one literally holding the mechanical vehicle itself together, the one who genuinely loves the ship and gets upset when people make jokes about it.
Serenity ain't Lissa.
There's an interesting theme running through the series where some people call Serenity garbage, and others recognize it as the sort of ship that can fly forever. I needn't tell you that one of the biggest things separating the common man from the wealthy snobs of the world is the ability to appreciate a reliable vehicle, rather than a pretty one. Kaylee is Firefly at its best in being the fantasy of a self-taught, self-determined craftsman, and being a brilliant female mechanic. Kaylee always loved the ship. She always appreciated the little things, whether eating strawberries or chasing after what makes her happy, in direct contradiction to Malcolm's hang-ups, repressed guilt, and inability to express himself. She brings out the best in every character, from Malcolm's leadership to River's wonder, even, somehow, Jane's affection. Kaylee never fought in a war against anyone. She came from a poor planet and is just happy to be here in the first place, just like us. If Malcolm is the gruff expression of defiance and heroism against the Alliance snobbery and indifference, a character important in showing what it means to stand for one's beliefs no matter how helpless things seem, Kaylee is the living culmination of everything he fought for. Firefly is a show about time, and no one appreciates time aboard Serenity more than Kaylee. And one day, I hope I can appreciate the space I'm in as much as Kaylee does every day. That would be enough. Is that Zac Efron?